done now?
The movie.
Yes, Don. I think I can help them make up their minds. Can I just get my little bag from the hall? Who can guess what's in here? Huh?
The evidence against us, no doubt.
We didn't know we were meeting you tonight. Did you know you were meeting us?
Oh, yes.
What were you told precisely?
Merely that you were all meeting to discuss our little financial arrangements. And if I did not appear, Wadsworth would be informing the police about it all. Naturally, I could hardly resist putting in an appearance. Excuse me. Open them.
Why not? I enjoy getting presents from strange men.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Clue the Movie Podcast, where we talk about the 1985 cult classic movie Clue, 1 minute at a time. My name is Brad Gilmore, joined as always as the director of the Clue documentary, cluedoc.com, Jeff Smith. Jeff, how are we?
Oh, we're doing well, and we are not alone.
We are not alone. So joining us to break down minute 26 is the author of the upcoming What Do You Mean, Murder? Clue and the Making of a Cult Classic. It's available for pre-order right now. John Hatch joins us. John, how you doing?
Doing great. Happy to be here.
We're excited to have you. Okay, so why don't we start here? Because we're talking about minute 26, and there's actually a lot in minute 26 I want to talk about. But John, let's start with you. The book is, of course, about the making of this movie that Jeff and I are mindlessly watching 60 seconds at a time. The movie that he spent, how many years did you work on the doc, Jeff?
5.5.
5.5 years doing. Why Clue? Why the book? Kind of walk us through kind of your Clue origin story and what led you to scribing such a manuscript.
As a kid, I used to love games, and I was always pestering my parents, we should play a board game. We should play a board game. Let's play Clue. Let's play Monopoly. And they would often opt for Clue because it's way shorter than Monopoly, and you can get through this game a lot faster with your kids. And so I was really into Clue, and then I heard there was going to be this movie. I'm 9 years old, and I see the trailer, and I'm so excited. My dad takes me to see Clue opening weekend. He did not take me 3 times to see all 3 endings, but we did go once. We saw what was then ending A. That was, well, are we being spoiler free? That was what is now the last ending in the movie right now for the home video version. That was ending A.
The here's what really happened ending.
That's the one. Okay. Here's what really happened. That was ending A. So we saw that, and I loved it. I had no idea that it was a flop or anything like that. Like 9 months later, it came out on home video in August 1986. And I was so worried that there was going to be this big rush to go get Clue from the video store that I called the video store. Here I am. I'm about to turn 10 years old. And my dad's like, call the video store. I call it. And, they have, of course they have it. Like there was not a big rush to rent Clue. So we went down it was a grocery store. We went down to the local grocery store. There was no Blockbuster Video, Hollywood Video at this point. And we got Clue. And after that, anytime it was on cable TV, I tuned in, and we got it on VHS at some point. We didn't get it right when it came out because it was one of those price to rent video cassettes in the 80s. It was like $79.95. So we were about to spend that in $1986, but eventually it came out for home video to own, and we got it. And ever since then, it's been in my regular rotation.
Wow. So you went to see it. You saw the original movie in the theaters. What do you remember? Was the theater, was it packed at the time?
It was not packed at the time. We weren't the only. I know. We weren't the only ones there, but it was not a sellout crowd.
So how do you go from, I'm a fan of this movie, I've watched it so many times, I almost rented it to buy. No, I almost bought it in 1986 for $79.99. How do you go from that to wanting to write a book?
When the pandemic hit, you could go rent a theater. And my wife and I discovered, wow, you can go rent a theater. The first time we rented a theater, it was like $80 to rent like an entire theater. And so we took our family, and the first movie we went to see was Back to the Future. We went and saw Back to the Future at the local theater, had it to ourselves, and it was amazing. We thought, like, this is the way to do this. This is the way to watch movies. We did that once, but a couple more times. I think we went and saw Tenet that way. But I got in the habit of looking up, like, well, what movies are going to be showing? And usually, honestly, it was just stuff that I didn't have much interest in. I was looking for like real, like old school classics, Casablanca and Citizen Kane and, you know, Chinatown, something like that. But one day there was Clue. And so I was so excited and immediately booked the theater, arranged for, you know, my family to be there. A couple of my siblings were there. We went and we watched Clue. And I want to say this was like in January of 2021.
Okay.
So we saw Clue, and it was just kind of a different experience seeing it on the big screen. You've got, you know, I'm starting to notice stuff. I heard dialogue that I hadn't really noticed because it was pretty loud. And looking at the thing that jumped out at me, and, you know, were the paintings in the study. I'm like, wait, is that William McKinley like there? And what is going on here? And that's James A. Garfield, you know, so we've got these presidential paintings in the study. And it set me on this path. And I started looking up stuff like, what could I find? There were tons of newspaper articles in 1985 about Clue. There were a lot of good sources. There were some archives that had some good stuff, some really interesting stuff. So just dug and thought, yeah, there's enough here. We could write a book about this, and off we go. And now it's almost done. I've turned it into my editor. They have some really good suggestions for me. So that's what I'm doing now, is going through those suggestions, and it should be out this November.
Wow, man. Look, first off, we're going to have to talk about the study here in a second, because I have some thoughts. So for me and Jeff and you have spent an intimate amount of time with these films. You know, a lot of time. I'm sure you've watched it umpteen times, and I'm familiar with the process doing the Back to the Future book. But I'm starting to notice things for the first time, you know, really, and Jeff and I as well, really watching it with the microscope. So I'm really interested to talk to you and see what you notice about it. Jeff, do you have anything for John before we move on? Oh, and one more thing, actually, Jeff, before I let you talk.
You're such a jerk. Jeff, are you ready to talk? Oh, just wait, one more second.
Just so, because I'm sure people out there want to know. $79.95 in 1986 dollars. Today, you would have paid $218.24 for a copy of Clue. Just so
or you could rent out a theater for $80.
Or you could do that.
It on the big screen.
But now, Jeff, it is mercifully your turn.
Oh, yeah, that was good. I know John's story. No, I was going to ask. I remember the supermarket video store too. We weren't members of that video store, but it was basically right where the Coinstar machine would be found now, as if I recall, right at the entrance. I remember they'd have the VHS and the Beta right next to each other, and I remember the Ghostbusters very vividly. The Ghostbusters video cover from those days. But yeah, going back to seeing it on the big screen, yeah, what I noticed, because I just watched Clue on the big screen a couple weeks ago, and what really popped for me was the cars, the colors of the cars. Really, it's on VHS. I never noticed that the cars were the colors of the players, and on now in 4K. Well, it's not on 4K yet, but on digital, it's a little more obvious, but on the screen, it was very obvious that Professor Plum's car was very purple. So it is a whole different experience. And if you find Clue in your neighborhood, I highly recommend seeing it. And you will get jokes that you didn't see before, for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've noticed a lot just from rewatching the movie in these 60-second intervals. Like, you're hearing a lot more, and you're thinking a lot more through. So John, you'll have to bear with us as we pontificate on Clue, because we go into it a little bit in depth. So let's, if we're ready, I think we can jump into now minute 26. Jeff, are we ready to jump into it?
We saw weapons make it into the room. We saw one weapon anyway. There is, well, we don't know what it is yet because Miss Scarlet has not told us yet what it is.
No,
but it looks like a candlestick holder.
It does look like a candlestick holder. So yeah, the minute begins with Mr. Body grabbing his briefcase, and then it ends with Miss Scarlet opening her weapon of choice, I guess. First impressions, John. What stands out to you from this minute?
I'm always struck by the study. Like I think if you were to count up the amount of time the characters spend in each room, my guess is they spend the most time in the study. Yeah. It seems to be kind of the heart of the movie. Like part of Deborah Hill, when she got the rights to Clue, part of her agreement with Parker Brothers was that every room in the game had to be in the movie. That was something stipulated by Parker Brothers. So you glimpse these other rooms, but the ballroom for a split second, for the conservatory for a split second, but the study, we're there a lot. And there's a lot going on there. Yeah, like we mentioned with the paintings and the furniture and the decor and everything. So that always jumps out at me. There's a Cobra lamp in there that's pretty cool if you really pay attention. The gold lamp behind Mr. Body, it's actually the body of a cobra is the stand for the lamp, and then the head and the tongue wrap around the lampshade. So they went to a great deal of trouble to really decorate the study and give it a lot of character.
Yeah, when you were talking about the paintings earlier, you said there were paintings of the presidents, William McKinley and James Garfield. Reason why that stood out to me as an admirer of presidential history, of course, those are two of the 4 U.S. presidents who have been assassinated. There's no Lincoln portrait in there that I know of, and this movie takes place prior to Kennedy assassination. So that is interesting. I'm assuming that had to been on purpose. There's no other reason most people put a James Garfield or William McKinley portrait. They're not well known, unfortunately, for much else.
Yeah, they're part of that Simpsons episode with the mediocre presidents, right? The lesser known presidents, where they come out and sing. Yeah, the other painting looks like it's of George Washington, and I got like a little too obsessed with that because it doesn't match any other painting. And so I even wrote the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C., and sent them a screenshot and asked if they recognize that. And they didn't. So it looks like it's an amalgamation. I'm pretty sure that's Washington. But all 3 of those paintings were created by the production team. They're not, prints or anything like they painted them to be the right size and to fit and everything. And so the Garfield and the McKinley, I found the original paintings that they copied, and they're just very slightly different because they were painting them as a copy. But that Washington one by the door, that one I can't quite figure out, but I think it's from 2 or 3 paintings that they just sort of decided, well, we'll just go with this.
And Jeff, what stands out to you though from minute 26? What are the first things that pop out to you?
Well, we have a wonderful Miss Scarlet line, as she often does. She does have I enjoy getting presents from strange men. And it is definitely one of the most quoted on Instagram lines that when the Clue fans start going on their rants on our pages, and I'm sure this happens on John's too, they'll just start quoting to each other and start doing the movie. And it's who knows why it stops when it stops, but I enjoy getting presents from strange men pops up a lot. And also I want to know who Mr. Body got to wrap the weapons, because they did a phenomenal job.
Yeah,
the
that
boxes with purple ribbon. Beautiful.
That is written in my notes. I said, wait a minute. Who wrapped them? Because they even have like a little velour kind of a satin inlay into them.
Yeah.
that are cut perfectly. They really spent a lot of time wrapping up weapons. And then here's my other point. What is the purpose of wrapping up the weapon? Like, what other than the cinematic reveal?
For dramatics.
Well, dramatics I understand. Cinematic effect, I understand it. But I'm trying to think of this as Mr. Body. Be like, hey, you know what? Not only am I going to pull them out of this beautiful alligator case, by the way.
Oh, fancy.
Very nice, which he has to have been. When I saw that, I said, oh, absolutely, he is blackmailing people, because that is an expensive case that he had there. But not only are you pulling them out of there, which is suspense enough, like what is he going to get from the briefcase? Then they are wrapped. There's an extra layer of a drama behind what they're going to be. And what I also think is funny is the first one that's revealed is a candlestick holder. Like, why the candle? Why would that be the first one revealed? Other than, I feel like it's the most popular weapon to reference from Clue. Would you not agree with that?
Okay. It's always somebody with the candlestick.
That's always the joke in any TV show, in any movie. Anytime somebody references it, I always feel like they go with the candlestick. I always feel like it's Colonel Mustard and a candlestick. I think is the two most popular. I don't know. Am I off on that, John? Would you?
It's definitely the ones that they hit people with, because I definitely hear the wrench a lot, and I hear the lead pipe a lot.
Pipe. You don't hear the revolver, the rope,
or the knife. Never the knife. No,
I think you're right. I hear the candlestick a lot. In fact, the cover of my book has the wrench, and the publisher was like, "What about the candlestick?" Because that's the one you hear. Yeah, I think that's true. I think maybe that's why that's the first one. There was a much, this is a family movie, family podcast, but there was a pretty dirty joke in one of the first drafts where Miss Scarlet makes quite the innuendo of what she would do if she had a candle for her candlestick. It was pretty aggressive. A lot of that, there was a lot more in those early drafts that got cut out.
Well, and Jeff, you're a screenwriter. Do you think that was when he's writing the movie? Do you think that he's like, when you get kind of like what the character is going to be in your head, you're like, okay, Miss Scarlet's going to be this raunchy madam, right? Who's always making the innuendos. Sometimes maybe you lean a little bit too hard in the first draft.
Probably, although I can hear Carrie Fisher making the same joke, the original Miss Scarlet. Actually,
Cary Grant would have really delivered that dialogue.
I can tell you what I can do with this candlestick. Yeah, John's been fortunate to read like early drafts, so he was sharing with me during his interview some of the saucy dialogue. And since we're not going to get to this minute with you, John, can you confirm that later when Professor Plum says, "Who did I kill?" and he says, "My butler," he does not say shucks, right?
That is correct. Yeah, that is correct. There are a few of those. There were a few of those. There was quite a bit more profanity that they cut out because that was also part of their agreement with Parker Brothers. This had to be a family film.
Now the shower, I remember you telling me about Wadsworth's line when he opens the shower door and turns on the water. There was a line of dialogue right after that, before the cut.
What was it?
After the cut.
Yeah.
What did he say?
He said, he said, "I'm in the effing shower."
Oh, okay.
I'll say that. I'll keep this family friendly still and say that. Yeah.
He's in the
and there were a few of those. Mrs. Peacock later says something similar to the evangelist. Instead of saying "get lost," she says something else.
Oh, wow. You say it's the agreement for Parker Brothers to keep this a family movie. The more I watch, though, Clue the movie, I wonder, is it a family film?
Yeah, it's very. Janet Maslin, in her review of Clue when it came out, she was like, she actually called out and said, "This is not the family movie, parents, that it has been advertised as. It has a ton of sexual innuendo in it." So that was even called out in 1985. Yeah, it's pretty. It's and of course there's adult themes. I mean, there's politics and blackmail and all of this stuff, but. Yeah, it's a pretty, Miss Scarlet there, when she opens that candlestick, she can be pretty aggressive.
Jeff, was a candlestick a common weapon of the time based on your research?
I haven't researched weapons in the 50s, I'll be honest. I failed you on that one. I did not research how many murders happened in the 50s thanks to or even when the game came out. I think they had to get a little creative at some point.
I think they were like, what else? We need another. We need a sixth one.
We got a knife. We got a rope.
Okay, we could do a pipe. Right? Yeah.
Sure. Let's not do bomb. Let's do.
No, maybe a rim.
Yeah, what would the weapons be now if they wanted to get really?
Yeah, like a syringe or something.
I'm gonna say syringe.
Well, they really would. They really wouldn't need the game now. Alexa would just report the murder to the police department. They
would go to Mr. Body's Google search and see how do you poison with antifreeze.
Well, here's my other thing about the packages that they're wrapped in. They're all also wrapped in a specific size box, it looks like, right? Like, whoever did this had to take an extraordinary amount of time. This was not a last minute, like on the way to Hill House, he's got the idea.
Stop at Target.
Right.
If they were me, they'd be in bags.
And there's no way Mr. Body did this.
Yeah, Body.
Mr. Body is not the type, right? Like he had somebody do this. He has like, can you imagine? Yeah, your assistant, hey, I need you to go out. I need you to get some boxes.
Oh man, why do I have to go get boxes for Mr. Body?
It is strange. Now, I also wanted to point out the ADR of Lee Ving, I actually think is really well done. Honestly, maybe I'm in the minority here, but I can't tell that's not him speaking, if that makes sense.
It seems like they avoid his lips early in the movie, and then as it goes on, even watching on the big screen that was a big question in the Q&A. They really wanted to know about that dubbing, which only comes from the fact that, and I actually posted a video of this on the ClueDoc site tonight because it was supposed to be one of the bonus features. It's the actual clip of Michael McKean saying that he was looped. But that's really the source for the fact that he's looped. And sometimes when you watch it, it seems like he's looped. But then as this scene goes on, it's pretty natural. And if you've heard his voice in the documentary, it's pretty close. So people have asked a lot, why was he looped? And I just think it was spite. I think that Jonathan Lynn was so butthurt about having to cast the lead singer from Fear. He's like, all right, you have the smallest part. You're going to have to be dead for the whole movie. And we're not even going to hear your voice that you're so famous for.
What do you think, John? What do you know about the looping of Mr. Body?
This is, even for me, this remains a mystery. I think I answered every question I had about Clue except for this one. And I think I am, I think I'm going to write Jonathan Lynn and ask him. And I know he's going to write back and be like, I don't remember. He will say he doesn't remember. But I feel like it's the one loose thread that I just have to ask about how that came about. I even went to the trouble of, I found a bunch of other Leaving stuff right before then. He did the first episode, actually, I think with Ned Beatty, I want to say, of the reboot of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And he was in this episode. He was in the first episode of this. And he sounds, his voice is a little bit higher than it is today in your documentary, Jeff. And so it doesn't sound as much like him, at least then. And so I don't know, like, if that was it, they wanted to make him menacing. That's something I write about in the book. It does seem at every stage, the way they wanted Leaving to be didn't work out, because I mean, he was supposed to be this disgusting, odious man. That's how he's written in the screenplay. And they end up with a rock star who takes his shirt off in front of crowds of women screaming for him, And so I wonder if it was just to try and make him more menacing. I don't know. Jeff might be onto something there. Maybe it is spite.
It could be.
It's funny that now, 35 years later, his voice is starting to sound like whoever dubbed him. But yeah, the one thing I did also notice about him on the big screen is when he's sitting in the back in that chair, I know we're off that minute, but he's like doing his hands, like rubbing his hands a lot together, like Mr. Burns. Just like, I'm a bad guy. He just keeps fiddling with his hands. And when he's that big on the screen, it was super distracting. I'm just staring at Leaving's digits the entire time going, what are you doing?
Yeah. Very, very, very interesting with Mr. Body. Now, here's a couple things I want to run by John that Jeff and I have talked about a lot throughout this podcast, and I want to get your reactions to them. We have a couple theories. We've noticed something, and then we have a question that we kind of use throughout. The first one I'll ask you is, who's the guiltiest of we call them the 6 game piece characters on the podcast. So of Scarlet, Plum, White, Peacock, Green, and Mustard, who would you say has the worst thing that they're being blackmailed for?
We've changed, so you don't.
Yeah, we've gone back and forth on that.
Changed, okay. Yeah. So I think off the top of my head, I would say I'm going to go with Mrs. Peacock. because I think, there's something about just the seediness of being willing to just sell your soul, basically for money, to sell out your country. Colonel Mustard's maybe a close second there for the same thing. But even that, there's sort of these limitations too. But Mrs. Peacock, I think Eileen Brennan was so great with her. I think she would do anything. I think she would sell anything. And so, to get her husband's vote, I think, it didn't matter what it was. She would just do it.
Interesting. We've never said Peacock.
Yeah, no. So I think our first one was, who did we say at first was Plum? Yes.
First was Plum just because he's such a pervo, but that's also with this year's glasses.
Right.
But then as we were watching the minutes, we kind of evolved into Mrs. White because she's pretty bad. The nice thing is this cast is they're all terrible if you just look at them all on paper. There's not a good person in this movie. It's like Seinfeld. They're just all bad, but they're so charming that even Eileen Brennan, she's just, except when she takes her glasses off. Whenever those glasses come off, you see the real evil behind her.
Actually, I'm kind of behind Peacock as a bad one because you are right now that I'm thinking about it. Now, maybe on paper, she hasn't done like the worst thing yet, but you are right, John. She's capable of anything, and there is a real menace to Eileen Brennan that I like. The other thing that Jeff and I have talked a lot about is we have a theory about Mr. Green. Jeff, do you want to lay this theory out for John?
Sure. Mr. Green, the real Mr. Green, never comes to the house. We think, even in the other endings, we think he is totally FBI, very much like, and then there were none. The Philip Lombard character is not the real Philip Lombard. Because the last episode we talked about it, that I hadn't noticed till seeing it on the screen, he seems to be the only person that Wadsworth doesn't recognize when he comes to the door. Everybody else, he identifies them immediately. But when he says, "Is this the place to meet Mr. Bond?" he goes, "Oh, you must be Mr. Green." And Wadsworth kind of has a confused look on his face when he opens the door, and you think, oh, it's because he's looking at the rain. But he's the only one he doesn't identify himself by name. And then, especially in the ending that you saw in the theater, he's getting the phone call from J. Edgar Hoover. He's the one that's, the plant. So I think we never really meet Mr. Green, and I would love to know. I think we talked about this before. Who in the Clue movie universe played the real Mr. Green? What actor? That doesn't ever show up. Anyway,
the real Mr. Green
theory.
That is so fascinating, and I've never even thought of that. I thought, no one has watched Clue or paid more attention to this than me, and I am wrong because I have never.
It doesn't.
It's the format.
Do it like this.
It's the format that's lent us to this.
Man. I can totally see that. You can really take this down a road, right? Where the real Mr. Green gets caught at the State Department. Very illegal to be gay in 1954 and work for the State Department, right? Yeah. And the FBI comes to him and say, "Hey, you can keep your job, but we need you to string this along. You need to give us all the information you have on Mr. Body, and we're going to catch him." And so I'm going to, and this agent goes and tries to the real Mr. Green, someone who showed up on the cast list of cast ideas with the note "not funny" next to his name, which shocks me. And I think it's in Deborah Hill's handwriting, was John Candy. Wow. So maybe John Candy is the real Mr. Green.
What? Not funny.
Even
I know. Yeah.
What?
He had done SCTV. Well,
what had he been coming off
Candy.
of? Yeah.
In interviews with John Candy, he seems pretty quiet, but a lot of comedians are very quiet and not that fun when they're just being themselves. But John Candy, not funny.
John Candy in 84. Let's look at 83. So this is what he would have been done. He would have been coming off of National Lampoon's Vacation.
Yeah, he's so not funny in that scene at Wally World. Okay, maybe she's right.
Going Berserk, which is one I don't recall. Splash. He was in Splash.
Yeah, he done Splash.
Yeah.
And then in 85, he did Brewster's Millions, Summer Rental Volunteer.
He almost did Ghostbusters.
Right. Well, that almost
they
doesn't
didn't-
count for her, though, right?
Yeah, they didn't cast him because his ideas were too weird. So maybe he was just weird at his.
I don't know, though. I'm looking at what he did before. It was 1941. He did.
Barely into that.
Yeah, true. Blues Brothers, Stripes.
Oh, he's good at Blues Brothers.
Yeah,
Whip.
And great in Stripes.
phenomenal in
gosh.
Stripes.
Yeah, he actually
So good in Stripes.
He's the
Yeah.
ox.
Yeah. I don't know. That may have been a big miss, but I like him being Mr. Green. I think the other thing that we talked about, John, was when Wadsworth was reading the letter, reading out the letters for everybody, and he gets to Mr. Green. Mr. Green cuts him off, right, completely, outs himself before
And
Wadsworth.
We
never hear what Wadsworth was reading, and I think that we noticed it was more than one page that he had, right?
Yeah, he does that famous flip.
The famous flip. So we wonder
Wow.
if he did that to cut off Wadsworth from revealing whatever Mr. Green was actually being blackmailed for, because he wasn't as intimately aware of it, I guess, as he would being this cover of, oh, I'll just say that I'm a homosexual in the State Department. That's easy to remember. That's why I'm being blackmailed, because I'm gay in the 50s.
In the 50s, that would cut everybody off real quick.
Right.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's canon. I think you've cracked it. Yep.
Now, the final thing I want to run by you and see, and I'm sure you've noticed this, but maybe you haven't. I don't know. Because, again, it's the format lent us to finding this,
Obsess.
our major discovery of, we were asking, well, how does Mrs. Peacock not recognize the cook if the cook was her cook at one point?
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen in the scene when they're in the dining room that Wadsworth completely blocks the cook at every single moment that Miss Peacock could potentially get eyes on her. Have you noticed this before?
I have noticed it, and it's actually called out in the screenplay that Wadsworth is supposed to block her. So this is something I've been fascinated with, because all this care was taken for Mrs. Peacock and the cook. You also notice in the library, the whole reason Mr. Green, the imposter Mr. Green, spilled his drink, his champagne on Mrs. Peacock was because he's cleaning her off and giving her time to be in the library while the cook runs away after she's banged the gong for dinner. And if you watch, she takes off. Kelly Nakahara runs pretty quickly, and that's actually called out. She's supposed to be gone so the cook doesn't see her. And so I'm always wondering, why was all this care given to hiding the cook from Mrs. Peacock, and none of the other informants are hidden later from the other guests?
Yeah,
And I don't know if it just, if it was just too hard, like did Jonathan Lynn just be like, okay, I can't hide the cop from Miss Scarlet, I can't hide the motorist from Colonel Mustard, but later on that kind of attention isn't given, but it is for Mrs. Peacock and the cook.
Wow, yeah. So it was in the screenplay, though, about the blocking of the cook for Mrs. Peacock. Wow, look at that, Jeff. I mean, this is crazy. This is crazy. That makes me so happy. Well, now, John, anything else you want to point out from this minute, or do you think we can go to minute 27?
I think we've covered minute 26.
Jeff, anything on 26? Do you want to talk about any more?
No, I want to see the other weapons.
I know we're about to see the other weapons. Jeff, let the people know where they can get the Blu-ray.
Nowhere. It is completely sold out.
We have pirated copies on eBay available, I believe.
Seen them, yeah. I know. That's how you know you've made it. Bad reviews and pirated eBay copies. I could die today and I'll be fine.
Okay, so they can't get them anywhere, but they can watch or they can potentially view the documentary.
You can see the bonus material that was supposed to be on the Blu-ray that mysteriously did not make it there. So that is now on cluedoc.com, as well as all the social media links to chat with us. Chat with me. It's me. There's no us.
It's us. It's us. There's an us.
Here it's us. Which is nice.
And then John, again, for everybody, the book is called "What Do You Mean, Murder? Clue in the Making of a Cult Classic." John Hatch. John, so can they pre-order anywhere?
They can pre-order anywhere. It is out there. It is all your favorite places to pre-order your books.
And then where can they find you if they want to get in contact with you?
They can go to my website, which is cluemoviebook.com, or I'm on Instagram, cluebook1.
Clue Book 1. And you can find me on all...
Number one.
The only
Somebody
one.
stole Clue Book.
Who did that? Who did that?
I don't know. Yeah. I don't think they post. I haven't
It's
looked
always
for
the
a while.
worst. I've looked at things for other titles for stuff, and I go, "Oh, it exists." And then I look and nothing. I go, "Why do you have this title? I would like to have for something else."
People who sit on social media handles and website domains, they're really the bane of my existence. There's been so many domains and social media handles that I cannot get. Well, anyway, John, thanks for joining us. We're excited to have you for the next minute as well. And Jeff, always great to see you.
Where can they find you, Brad?
All social media at Brad Gilmore is where you can find me, except for TikTok at Boat Gilmore. And we will be back next week with minute 26 of Clue the Movie. See y'all.